Why the richest always control your choices, and you don't. Machiavelli already knew this. Is it true, then, that some are simply built to win, while others are destined to watch from the sidelines, forever playing catch-up? We see it everywhere, don't we? The effortless ascent of some, the perpetual struggle of others. It's not just about money, though that's often the most visible manifestation. It's about power, influence, the ability to shape outcomes, to navigate the currents of life with a seemingly innate advantage. We observe the wealthy, the politically connected, those who always seem to land on their feet, often appearing to do so with a strategic foresight that eludes the rest of us. They make bold moves, take calculated risks, and somehow, more often than not, emerge stronger. Meanwhile, many of us, diligently playing by the rules, saving, planning, striving, find ourselves consistently on the losing end of life's grand lottery. A promotion slips through our fingers, a business venture falters, a personal aspiration remains just out of reach. It's a pattern so persistent, so deeply ingrained in the fabric of our societal observation, that it begs a fundamental question: is there a secret, a hidden playbook, that the successful inherently understand? A wisdom perhaps so ancient and pragmatic that it feels almost like a betrayal of our more idealistic notions of fairness and merit? This isn't about envy, or a lament for personal misfortune, though those feelings can certainly surface when we witness the stark contrast. Instead, it's an inquiry into the very mechanics of power and influence, a dive into the often unspoken principles that govern how advantages are accumulated and maintained. We are told that hard work, integrity, and kindness are the keys to a fulfilling life, and indeed, they are noble aspirations, cornerstones of any decent society. But what if these virtues, when wielded in a world that doesn't always prioritize them, leave us vulnerable? What if the very qualities we cherish most are precisely what can hinder our progress in a system that rewards a different kind of acumen? We've all experienced that moment of bewilderment when someone we deem less qualified, less ethical, or simply less deserving, seems to glide past us, securing the very opportunities we've poured our heart and soul into pursuing. It's in these moments of stark disparity that the whispers of a more Machiavellian reality begin to surface. We're going to explore a perspective that challenges our comfortable assumptions about success and failure, a lens that suggests the wealthy, the powerful, the consistently winning individuals operate under a set of principles that are often antithetical to the conventional wisdom we have been taught. This isn't to advocate for amorality, but rather to understand the strategic, often dispassionate, approach to acquiring and holding power that has been observed and articulated by thinkers who dared to look at the world not as it should be, but as it is. We'll be delving into the mindset of those who understand that in the arena of human affairs, perception can be more potent than reality, that strategic maneuvering can often trump raw talent, and that the accumulation of power is a game with its own set of ruthless, yet undeniably effective, rules. This journey is an invitation to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives we have been fed, and to consider whether a deeper understanding of human nature, as laid bare by the sharpest minds in history, might offer a more potent framework for navigating our own aspirations and understanding the world around us. We will not be seeking to emulate, but to comprehend, for in comprehension lies the first step towards a more informed and perhaps more effective engagement with the forces that shape our lives. The core concept we're examining is virtue, a term often misunderstood and frequently rendered simply as virtue in English translations of Machiavelli. However, its meaning is far more nuanced and, for our purposes, critical to understanding the dynamics of power. Virtue, in the Machiavellian sense, is not about moral goodness or adhering to conventional ethical standards. Instead, it refers to a potent combination of skill, strength, decisiveness, and the capacity to adapt and act effectively in the pursuit of one's goals, particularly in the political or public sphere. It's the ability to seize opportunities, to anticipate threats, and to employ whatever means are necessary to maintain and expand one's power and state, even if those means are considered harsh or unprincipled by ordinary moral standards. This quality allows a leader, or indeed any ambitious individual, to navigate the inherent instability of human affairs and to impose order and achieve desired outcomes. It's a practical, pragmatic excellence, a form of mastery over circumstances, rather than an adherence to abstract moral ideals. The rich in our observation, the consistently successful, often exhibit this virtue, not necessarily through inherited wisdom, but through a learned pragmatism that prioritizes efficacy and results above all else. They understand that the world is not a classroom where good intentions are rewarded, but an arena where decisive action, even if morally ambiguous, often dictates the victor. Consider the stark contrast between a politician who meticulously adheres to every procedural rule, always seeking consensus and avoiding any potentially controversial stance, and one who, while perhaps less polished, possesses the virtue to make bold, swift decisions that reshape the political landscape. The former might be seen as honorable by many, but the latter, by their very ability to act decisively and effectively, often accumulates greater influence and achieves more significant, albeit sometimes divisive, results. This isn't to say that integrity is valueless. Rather, Machiavelli argues that in the struggle for power, the appearance of certain virtues can be more strategically advantageous than their actual possession, and that the willingness to act without regard for conventional virtue, when circumstances demand it, is the hallmark of true political effectiveness. The wealthy, in their business dealings or their broader influence, often demonstrate the same calculated approach. They might project an image of generosity or fairness, but beneath that, their decisions are driven by a relentless pursuit of advantage and a keen understanding of the leverage points within any negotiation or situation. This capacity for strategic calculation, for prioritizing outcomes over adherence to strict moral codes, is a key differentiator. Furthermore, this concept of virtue encompasses the ability to understand and manipulate human nature. Machiavelli was acutely aware that people are often driven by self-interest, fear, and a desire for security. The individual possessing virtue understands these motivations and can leverage them to their advantage. They know when to be feared and when to be loved, recognizing that while being loved is desirable, being feared can be a more reliable foundation for power, especially in times of crisis. The truly successful, then, are not necessarily those who are inherently good or benevolent, but those who possess the keen insight into human psychology and the strategic acumen to exploit it. Now, consider how this applies when you face a career advancement opportunity. Do you focus solely on performing your duties impeccably, hoping your merit will be recognized, or do you also strategically network, subtly highlight your achievements, and perhaps even anticipate and address the unspoken needs or concerns of those in power? The latter approach, while potentially feeling less pure, aligns more closely with the Machiavellian understanding of virtue, an active, strategic engagement with the power dynamics at play, rather than a passive reliance on merit alone. Another crucial layer to this virtue is adaptability. The world is in constant flux, and those who rigidly adhere to a single approach will inevitably be overtaken by changing circumstances. Machiavelli emphasized that a prince must be like a clever fox, able to recognize traps, and a strong lion, able to frighten wolves. This means being able to shift tactics, to be both cunning and forceful, and to change one's nature when necessity dictates. The wealthy, in their sustained success, often demonstrate this remarkable flexibility. They are not wedded to a single business model, a single investment strategy, or a single public persona. They are willing to pivot, to embrace new technologies, to adapt to market shifts, and to abandon failing ventures without sentimentality. This fluid, adaptive quality allows them to weather storms that would sink less adaptable individuals or organizations. They understand that clinging to outdated methods or principles out of stubbornness or a misplaced sense of loyalty is a recipe for decline. This dynamic nature is what allows them to not just survive, but to thrive, consistently finding new avenues for growth and influence, thereby solidifying their position and ensuring that their advantages are not merely temporary but enduring. Beyond the pragmatic application of virtue as decisive action and psychological manipulation, there exists a profound understanding of opportunity recognition and strategic risk-taking that distinguishes the consistently successful. This isn't merely about spotting a chance, it's about cultivating an environment where opportunities are more likely to arise and then possessing the courage to seize them, even when the odds appear daunting. The wealthy rarely wait for opportunities to knock, they actively construct the doorways. Consider the entrepreneur who doesn't just have a good idea, but meticulously builds a network, cultivates relationships with potential investors, and strategically positions their company to be attractive when the market inevitably shifts. They are not simply reacting to fortune, they are orchestrating its arrival. This proactive stance involves a sophisticated assessment of probabilities, a willingness to embrace calculated uncertainty, and an understanding that inaction, in itself, is a profound risk. Building on this, however, the truly adept at accumulating and maintaining advantage possess an almost uncanny ability to reframe disadvantage. Where others see a setback, a failure, or a limitation, they perceive a unique leverage point or a necessary recalibration. For instance, a public relations crisis that could cripple a less sophisticated entity might be skillfully maneuvered by those with Verta into a demonstration of transparency and resilience, ultimately strengthening their public image and solidifying customer loyalty. This isn't about deception, but about a profound understanding of narrative control and the human tendency to rally behind perceived strength in adversity. They understand that the narrative surrounding an event is often more impactful than the event itself, and they are masters at shaping that narrative to their advantage, transforming potential Waterloo moments into strategic triumphs. Furthermore, a crucial layer is the cultivation of strategic alliances and control dependencies. The consistently successful rarely operate in isolation. They understand the power of collaboration, but not necessarily in the spirit of egalitarian partnership. Instead, they form alliances that serve their ultimate objectives, often positioning themselves as the indispensable linchpin of these relationships. They might offer resources or expertise, but in return, they secure access, influence, or control over critical pathways. This can manifest in business through strategic partnerships where one party holds the intellectual property and the other the distribution channels, or in politics where influential figures back a candidate who, in turn, owes them significant favors. The key is to structure these relationships so that they generate ongoing advantages and minimize the risk of being outmaneuvered by allies themselves. It's about creating a web of mutual benefit, but one where they hold the strongest threads, ensuring that their own interests are consistently prioritized. Conversely, consider how this applies when you face a negotiation for a new contract or a salary increase. Do you present your case solely on the basis of your past performance, or do you also identify potential future value you can bring, perhaps by leveraging connections or offering insights that directly address the other party's strategic goals? This approach, mirroring the cultivation of strategic alliances, involves demonstrating how your success is intertwined with theirs, making your continued engagement not just beneficial, but almost essential for their own future gains. It's about shifting the dynamic from a simple transaction to a mutually reinforcing relationship where your continued involvement is actively sought, thus preserving and enhancing your leverage. This strategic foresight transforms a simple request into an investment in a shared future, a cornerstone of sustained advantage. A further, and perhaps most subtle, element of sustained advantage lies in the masterful manipulation of information asymmetry. Those who consistently win understand that knowledge is not merely power, it is a currency that can be strategically hoarded, selectively disseminated, or even deliberately obscured to shape outcomes. This isn't about possessing more data, but about controlling the flow and interpretation of that data. Consider the world of high-stakes finance. While the public might see a stock price rise or fall based on widely reported earnings, the truly informed players have access to insider information, pre-release analyses, or an understanding of market sentiment that is not yet publicly reflected. They don't just have information, they control who has access to it, and when. This creates an environment where their decisions are based on a more complete, or at least a more advantageous, picture of reality, while others are left reacting to delayed or incomplete signals. This deliberate cultivation of an informational edge is a silent, yet potent, engine of sustained success. Building upon this, however, is the art of managing perception through calculated revelation. It's not enough to simply possess superior information, one must also influence how that information is perceived by the wider audience. Think of a political campaign that strategically leaks certain policy details to gauge public reaction, or a company that releases carefully curated positive quarterly reports while downplaying underlying structural issues. The goal is to shape the narrative, to create a desired impression that influences decisions,
whether by voters, consumers, or investors. This involves a sophisticated understanding of psychology and public relations, a willingness to selectively highlight strengths and strategically conceal weaknesses, not out of outright dishonesty, but out of a pragmatic recognition that public opinion is a powerful force that can be harnessed for advantage. The wealthy often excel at this, projecting an aura of competence, foresight, and stability, even when facing internal challenges. Consequently, this leads to the development of a resilient personal and institutional brand. The consistently successful understand that their reputation is not just a reflection of their past actions, but a strategic asset for future endeavors. They invest in cultivating a brand that inspires trust, confidence, and loyalty, even when individual transactions or performance might falter. This brand acts as a buffer against criticism and a magnet for opportunity. When a company with a strong brand faces a product recall, for instance, its loyal customer base is often more forgiving, and the media coverage tends to be less damaging than it would be for a less established entity. Similarly, individuals with a strong personal brand, seen as innovative, reliable, or visionary, find doors opening for them more readily, even if their immediate track record has a few blemishes. This perceived invincibility, built on carefully managed perceptions and consistent positive reinforcement, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, attracting the very opportunities that sustain their winning streak. Now, consider how this applies when you're seeking to establish a new venture or even seeking a new professional role. Do you focus solely on the tangible aspects of your product or your skills, or do you also actively consider how to craft a compelling narrative about your vision, your mission, and your unique value proposition? This involves thinking about how to present yourself in your endeavor not just as competent, but as essential, as forward-thinking, as the definitive solution to a problem that others may not even fully recognize yet. It's about building that brand, that perception of inherent value and future potential, that draws resources and support, ensuring that you are not just participating, but leading the charge, thereby securing a more dominant and advantageous position from the outset. The ability to cultivate sustained advantage also hinges on a profound understanding of anticipatory adaptation, a forward-thinking approach to change that transcends mere reaction. It's about sensing the subtle tremors of future disruptions and proactively restructuring one's position to not only weather the storm, but to emerge stronger. Think of industries that have been fundamentally reshaped by technological innovation. The businesses that thrived weren't those that simply adopted new software. They were the ones that fundamentally re-envisioned their entire operational paradigm, often anticipating the shift years before it became mainstream. Consider a legacy media company that, instead of merely digitizing its print archives, invested heavily in interactive digital platforms and original streaming content, effectively pivoting from selling physical newspapers to becoming a multi-faceted digital entertainment provider. This proactive metamorphosis, driven by foresight rather than necessity, is a hallmark of enduring success. They don't just adapt to the future, they actively engineer it. Furthermore, this proactive stance involves the strategic cultivation of redundancy and optionality. The consistently successful understand that over-reliance on a single pathway, a single market, or a single key relationship creates inherent vulnerability. They build in multiple avenues for revenue, multiple skill sets within their organizations, and multiple strategic partnerships, creating a robust ecosystem that can absorb shocks. Imagine a manufacturing firm that, while excelling in its primary product line, also invests in developing complementary technologies or acquiring smaller companies in adjacent markets. Should their main product face obsolescence or intense competition, these diversified interests provide a crucial safety net and often unlock new growth opportunities. This isn't about spreading resources too thinly, but about strategically creating a web of interconnected strengths, ensuring that a setback in one area does not precipitate a collapse of the entire structure. It's about building resilience through foresight and diversification. Building on this, however, is the principle of strategic disengagement and calculated retreat. Just as important as knowing when to push forward is knowing when to cut losses and withdraw from unfavorable situations. The consistently winning individuals and organizations are not afraid to abandon failing projects, divest from unprofitable divisions, or even withdraw from markets that no longer offer a strategic advantage. This requires a remarkable degree of emotional detachment and a ruthless focus on long-term objectives. Consider a venture capitalist who, after extensive due diligence, realizes a promising startup is fundamentally flawed. Instead of doubling down in the hope of a turnaround, they might discreetly sell their stake, minimizing further losses and reallocating those capital resources to more promising ventures. This willingness to retreat, to shed what is no longer serving them, is not a sign of weakness but a profound strategic wisdom, freeing up resources and mental energy for more fruitful pursuits. Conversely, the ability to leverage network effects and positive feedback loops is another critical differentiator. The consistently successful understand that success breeds further success, creating self-reinforcing cycles of advantage. As a company gains market share, its brand recognition increases, attracting more customers. This increased customer base allows for greater economies of scale, potentially lowering prices or improving product quality, which in turn attracts even more customers. Similarly, individuals who build strong professional networks find that each new connection opens doors to further opportunities, recommendations, and collaborations. Now, consider how this applies when you are building your own professional reputation or launching a new initiative. Are you actively seeking to create these feedback loops? This might involve seeking out early adopters who can provide testimonials, engaging with influential figures who can amplify your message, or structuring your offerings to encourage repeat business and referrals. It's about consciously designing your efforts to harness the power of growth, ensuring that each step forward propels you even further, creating a momentum that is difficult for competitors to overcome. The consistently successful also demonstrate a profound mastery of optimizing operational inertia. This involves understanding that established systems, once in motion, possess a certain momentum that can be harnessed and directed. It's not simply about having efficient processes, but about understanding how to engineer those processes for maximum leverage, ensuring that each incremental step contributes disproportionately to the overall goal. Consider a large logistics company that, through meticulous analysis of its routing and delivery schedules, identifies bottlenecks not just for efficiency, but for strategic advantage. By subtly optimizing the flow of goods, they can not only reduce costs but also gain preferential access to key distribution points or create subtle delays for competitors, all while appearing to operate with standard efficiency. This leverages the inherent inertia of their vast operations to subtly outmaneuver rivals without overt confrontation, a testament to their deep understanding of systemic dynamics. Furthermore, there is the crucial element of cultivating inherent biases and decision-making processes. The astute understand that human judgment, even in seemingly objective environments, is often swayed by deeply ingrained cognitive biases. They learn to identify these biases: confirmation bias, availability heuristic, anchoring effects, and strategically position information or present choices in ways that naturally steer decision makers towards favorable outcomes. This isn't about outright deception, but about presenting a compelling case that aligns with how people are predisposed to think. For example, in a negotiation, a party might strategically anchor the initial offer at an extreme, knowing that subsequent discussions will likely gravitate closer to that initial figure, even if it's an unreasonable starting point. This psychological leverage, applied consistently, can lead to significantly more advantageous terms over time, subtly shaping the landscape of outcomes in their favor. Building on this, however, is the art of strategic obsolescence and controlled innovation. The truly successful don't just innovate, they manage the life cycle of their innovations with a keen eye on maintaining market dominance. This involves not only developing new products or services, but also understanding when and how to make existing ones less desirable or even obsolete, thereby creating a natural demand for their next iteration. Think of the tech industry's rapid product cycles. A company might intentionally release a product with a perceived limitation or a slightly less advanced feature, knowing that a superior version is already in development. This creates a continuous upgrade cycle, ensuring sustained revenue and preventing customers from settling into complacency with older technologies. This deliberate management of technological progression, driven by a strategic understanding of consumer psychology and market dynamics, ensures a perpetual advantage. Conversely, Consider how this applies when you are presenting a proposal for a new project or seeking investment for a startup. Are you framing your innovation not just as an improvement, but as an inevitable evolution, subtly suggesting that clinging to older methods will eventually lead to competitive disadvantage? This involves highlighting the inherent limitations of the status quo and positioning your offering as the essential next step, thereby leveraging the natural human inclination to embrace progress and avoid being left behind. It's about creating a sense of urgency and inevitability around your proposition, ensuring that the momentum of change works in your favor, rather than against you. This is about understanding that the future is not just something to be encountered, but something to be actively shaped through strategic foresight and calculated action. Reflecting on this journey so far, we've traced a complex tapestry of principles that seem to undergird sustained advantage, moving beyond simplistic notions of merit or luck. It's as if we've been examining the hidden currents beneath the surface of a vast ocean, currents that, when understood, reveal the true forces shaping the movement of ships. What emerges is not a single, monolithic strategy, but a confluence of dynamic capabilities, a keen awareness of the underlying architecture of influence, coupled with an agile responsiveness to its ever-shifting contours. The notion of power, as we have seen, is less about inherent authority and more about a practiced art of navigation, a continuous calibration of action and perception. As we pivot towards the final reflection, consider the cumulative effect of these observations, a landscape where foresight isn't just prediction, but active creation, where understanding human nature isn't merely academic, but a tool for shaping reality, and where every interaction, every decision, becomes a node in a larger strategic network. It's akin to understanding that a chess master doesn't just see the next move, but anticipates a cascade of possibilities, each move a deliberate step in a grander, intricate design. The accumulated insights suggest a profound interconnectedness between inner disposition and outward circumstance, where the seemingly disparate elements we've explored coalesce into a coherent, albeit demanding, philosophy of engagement. In light of these insights, the path forward becomes clearer, not in the sense of a prescribed map, but in the illumination of the terrain itself. We've laid bare the intricate mechanisms that allow for the consistent accumulation and preservation of advantage, revealing a pattern of calculated action and strategic perception that operates with remarkable efficacy. The convergence of these threads compels us to consider how deeply these dynamics are woven into the fabric of our own aspirations and interactions. It prompts a re-evaluation of the very foundations upon which we build our hopes and pursue our goals, encouraging a more nuanced and perhaps more potent approach to navigating the complexities of our world. The stark reality we've navigated suggests that true mastery in the arenas of influence and advantage isn't merely about possessing inherent talent or adhering to noble ideals. It's about cultivating a profound, almost artful, understanding of the currents that shape human affairs, and then learning to skillfully direct one's own trajectory within them. The rich, or more accurately, the consistently successful, are not necessarily born with a secret inheritance of fortune, but with a cultivated disposition towards strategic foresight, adaptive resilience, and a keen awareness of the psychological levers that drive outcomes. They understand that the world, in its rawest form, is a landscape of competing interests, and that navigating it effectively requires more than just good intentions. It demands a disciplined pragmatism, a willingness to analyze, to anticipate, and to act with a clarity that often transcends conventional moral frameworks. This isn't an endorsement of amorality, but an observation of how efficacy is often achieved in systems that value results over process, and decisive action over hesitant contemplation. The enduring lesson, then, is not to simply mimic the strategies we've observed, but to internalize the mindset that enables them. It is about recognizing that the most significant advantages are often forged in the quiet spaces of strategic planning, in the subtle art of perception management, and in the unwavering commitment to learning and adapting. The true power lies not in possessing more resources, but in understanding how to leverage what one has with unparalleled precision. It's about transforming potential setbacks into strategic pivots, and competitive challenges into opportunities for demonstrable strength. This is the essence of Virta as a practical, dynamic force, the capacity to impose one's will upon circumstances, not through brute force or inherent superiority, but through a nuanced comprehension of the intricate interplay between human nature, systemic dynamics, and the ever-present flow of opportunity. Ultimately, the journey we've undertaken is an invitation to see the world not as a passive recipient of fate, but as an active participant in the creation of one's own reality. The consistent winners understand that success is not a destination, but a continuous process of calculated engagement. They embrace the inherent complexities and ambiguities of life, not with resignation, but with a strategic clarity that allows them to harness these forces for their own advancement. The true practice begins now, to observe, to analyze, and to cultivate within ourselves that discerning eye, that adaptive spirit, and that decisive will, not to hoard advantage, but to engage with the world more fully, more intentionally, and perhaps, more effectively. The question is no longer if these principles operate, but how we choose to understand and respond to them in the unfolding narrative of our own lives.